Mitch Marner has a different view on the Leafs' shutout loss to Vancouver as the offense hits another bump in the road. Hey everyone, welcome to Inside the Leafs. Rob Wong, joined alongside by Toronto Sun Maple Leafs writers Terry Koshan and Lance Hornby. And guys, Mitch Marner has had an incredible season so far, but he has Leafs Nation talking about him for all the wrong reasons at the moment, saying after Saturday's 3-0 shutout loss to the Canucks that he thought the team played well. That was not the view shared by teammate Chris Tanev, who says the Leafs were not good enough, while head coach Craig Berube said he did not think his team played with enough pace or with enough energy. Lance, of course, Terry, you guys were both in the room for that moment. We'll start with you, Terry. What did you make of Marner's comment?
Well, I don't know. It's hard to know where he's coming from. Tanev always cuts through it. He hasn't had to do it much this year, but there was an earlier game where he made a nice play and on a goal, and they had lost, and he basically came out and said, "Who cares? We lost the game." I'd be okay with it, and I'm sure Leaf Nation would be too, if after a loss like that, Marner just looked at us, crossed his arms, and said, "I wasn't good enough, and neither was the team." That doesn't happen, and why, I don't know that. I really don't know. Tanev holds himself and the team accountable. Your own coach says you didn't play with energy, pace, and life. Austin Matthews, the captain, said about the power play, there's a whole lot of nothing going on. Well, last I checked, Mitch Marner is a big part of that. So I don't know what it is. Maybe we're making too much of it. Maybe we really should be concentrating on what Tanev said, what Berube said, and because that's really the truth here. But why Marner went that way, I don't know. But how you can say you like that after you register 20 shots on goal against a team that arrived in Toronto or got to its hotel at 2 p.m, played the night before and lost, is not exactly a Stanley Cup contender. And you had 3 power plays that I think you had 2 shots on goal combined, all 3. Like I said, how you say after that you like the effort, I don't know. I really don't know.
Well, I look at it and think it's not the first time that Marner's had some interesting comments that go against the grain, and sometimes he talks a little bit before he thinks, maybe because he's emotional. Everyone remembers the comment about we're treated like gods here at the end of last year, and that angered a lot of people as well. You know what? He's generally spot on. I would cut him some slack simply because when the Leafs were winning 5 straight, he was among the players who said, we still have another gear here. We're not we're not totally happy with our games, and when most of us thought really there wasn't a lot wrong with the Leafs at that point. So kind of ill-timed, certainly after a loss. It's not just a loss to any team. It was a team, as Terry mentioned, that should have been there for the pickings, and the Leafs let them off the hook. But just because Marner is sometimes who he is and sometimes can't, I think Terry and I both know him as a player who sometimes doesn't like when the criticism is heavily leveled at the team, and sometimes his response comes out that way. Very unfortunate comments, but something I'd be willing to overlook and move on to what's a busy week for the team.
Yeah, I would too. I would just say though that it happens with him more often than not, and you know, I don't know. I just, like I said earlier, just own up to it. Accountability, especially with the way that things have gone in the playoffs. The other thing too, Lance, I think is he wasn't the only one saying things when things were going well. Other guys said too, okay, we know we're not perfect. We have to do this A, B, and C. He just doesn't own up to these things, and I think that's what angers Leafs Nation the most.
Meanwhile, this is the third time the Leafs have been shut out this season, Lance. This is a team that had the third longest non-shutout streak in NHL history under Sheldon Keefe. Is it just a coincidence, or is it something about Craig Berube's system that is prone to going goalless from time to time?
Well, I mean, we've seen a lot of more tight games, certainly from this version of the Maple Leafs, and certainly they were, kind of buzzing around. They've had at various times guys who've been slumping. We saw it earlier in the year. Now, ironically enough, it seems to be Nylander who's having those issues after he was so strong. It's certainly bothersome when you don't get a lot of goals against I believe Lankin. It also was Vancouver was a goalie that the Leafs had not lost to in 4 games, and certainly with a little bit more push, they would have been around there. It leaks back to the power play. Sometimes it's not, we read or hear all the time. It could be the difference in the game. Certainly with the Maple Leafs, that has been quite true, and that's come back to haunt them. And also giving up a goal early on the first shot, which has happened a couple of times, certainly around in the Hildeby era, so to speak, has put them on the wrong foot, and they've been playing catch up, which is not something that they're known for at this stage. Of course, we're only halfway through the year. We'll have to see how that evolves.
It's not a coincidence. They led the NHL in 5-on-5 goals last year with 200. Right now, they're on pace for 166. Like, how do you drop 34 and say it's not part of what they're doing now? Some of the creativity is out of the game, and that's part of what Berube wants. I mean, you can't argue with the defensive strides, right? I think they've jumped from, as of today, 21st to 11th in goals against or something like that, and that's great. But to me, in the second half, there has to be a better balance here between offense and defense. Because I always hear about defense leading to more offense and success and that sort of thing. And yes, the Leafs are in first place in the division and all that. That's great. But, there's just more. There's the talent is there to be scoring more or executing more, putting the puck in the net more, producing more, whatever you want, however you want to put it. But no, I don't think it's a coincidence that they've been shut out 3 times, shut out twice on home ice for the first time since 2018-19. So it tells you how much they were scoring before, and we'll see where it goes. But to me, in the second half, that's got to be a focus for them. Is okay, you have the defensive side down pat for the most part now. How do you turn that around at the other end and be a little more consistent that way? Because, like Lance talked about the power play, and true, Berube after the game the other night said, you get momentum from that power play. If you score, then things change, even with the early goal against. And as we saw, it didn't happen. The Leafs didn't take a penalty, so the Canucks didn't have a power play themselves. But, it's really inexcusable as far as the power play goes. And then, the offense as a whole, there's more potential and talent there than what they've shown, for sure.
I'd certainly agree, only to say that that defensive way that they've grinding through games, that's probably going to win them more playoff games, sticking to that style, again, with the difference being a power play goal or a bit more creativity. But they're not going to blow teams out. We've seen this core 4 group go into playoffs many times and find out suddenly that the rink had shrunk on them.
I would agree with that on the whole, Lance. But if we're just looking at Saturday specifically, that was the type of game it was, and they got shut out. So you do need that offense every so often. They're not going to get shut out all the time. We know that. The first time it happened was the season opener, and they badly outplayed Montreal and lost 1-0. So the other was a 3-0 stinker against Ottawa in mid-November. And generally that will win in the playoffs. But I don't think you want to leave it to chance either. I just think you want to get better on offense here and be a lot more productive than they have been.
Well, it's not going to be any easier this week with 2 of the better defensive teams coming into Toronto with Dallas and New Jersey. As always, leave your thoughts in the comment section below. For Terry Koshan and Lance Hornby, I'm Rob Wong. Thanks for watching, and we'll talk to you next time.